address the strategic concern of China, and it has to be addressed at the top level. That's always the lesson of diplomacy. Without that, no amount of labor by our ambassador, foreign minister will get us anywhere to achieving a solution to our dispute. Of course, we need all this island, we need the resources, the fishing resources there, because we are a poor country. We need that badly. But the problem is, are we taking the right strategy in dealing with China? That's the big question that I think we haven't really resolved as the case, the situation today. So now let's see go. So here we are, media in China. We are foreign journalists. You know, the history of Chinese media is basically maybe 3 stages. The first batch of media in China, and that will also reflect on how the Chinese evolved their own, including foreign policy and dealing with foreign media. First stage was after the diplomatic relationship with the U.S. was established. There's a big batch of foreign media establishing bureaus in China. That was in the early 80s. But that was the time when the Communist Party was not really, they were not used to dealing with the foreign media, so they have a lot of restrictions. Very few places in China were open to the foreigners. So, and every time you move out of the town of Beijing, you have to ask for permission. That's how they display. And being television, you can only send your signals, television signals, to the state-controlled central television. You cannot go to other sources of satellite vendors, satellite business who can transmit to me. They control everything. They have, not that they look at every word, they can monitor news reporting, and they are sensitive to negative reporting as well. But overall, they made a decision to welcome foreign media as part of the opening door strategy. You cannot open up your economy, reform your economy without opening to the media. So that became an inevitable part of the thing. Although at first stage they were groping in the dark, so to speak, for the best policy to do the foreign media. So they started off with very lot of restrictions. That continued until 1989. As you know, in 1989, we were covering Tiananmen Square massacre. At that time, they were already a little bit of changing the foreign media policy. In fact, they welcomed hundreds of foreign media in 1989, and that is one of the why we came to know that Tiananmen Square became the world news, because they invited hundreds of media back in to witness the historic summit between Deng Xiaoping and Gorbachev. You know, because suddenly become friends. So Deng Xiaoping wants to, you know, so they invited the foreign. It happened that one of the leaders, the Politburo, died, and he represented the democratic reform. You know, so the students sit on his death to commemorate him, to remember him, and to demand democracy, and to demand the perestroika of Gorbachev. You know, first reform was already going on. You know, in the Soviet case, economic, in fact, political reform came first. Perestroika, restructuring of the political structure. Before the economic, there was not even a sensible economic reform in Russia. Just so the decision that led to more and more people assembling at Tiananmen Square, the center of that, demonstration. So anyway, so those were the time when that was a special case. They probably regretted that, but that was the reason the planning to invite. So when this Tiananmen Square erupted, the whole world media was there. There was no way to suppress. Eventually, of course, they withdraw all the privileges. At the end of it, they even stopped us from sending satellite signals. You know, they stopped all satellite service. So there was no choice but to, you know, pigeon. You know, we used called pigeon. We send tapes on the airplane and send them to Hong Kong, Japan, so that we can transmit messages, images of Tiananmen massacre. So that was the first period of the media policy. Very restricted. They have absolute control. They even required foreign media to live in designated offices and residential compounds so that they have better control. We can't just freely live anywhere in Beijing. Most of the foreign media were in Beijing. So that continued until the first few years in the aftermath of Tiananmen Square. And then, but Deng Xiaoping reformed. He realized, although he is the architect of reform. He's also the author of the Tiananmen tragedy, right? Because nobody would have had authority to call on the troops to fire, because nobody had that authority. Only he had authority because he is the military chief, or he has that authority. So he's order. But he realized that if there was a short-lived campaign against bourgeois liberalization, westernization, basically tried to close down China a little bit, because the Tiananmen massacre, according to some group faction of the party, was the product of the reform. That without this opening up, they would not have this Western influence, political philosophy from the West, all this advocacy of democracy that would influence the minds of the young people. So there was a debate that our reform should be socialist reform, the Mr. Socialist reform, and should not be the Mr. Capitalist reform. There was a little bit of debate about that in the aftermath of Tiananmen Square. Deng Xiaoping, to his credit, saw the danger of that. So although he authored the Tiananmen tragedy, a few years later, 1992, 3 years later, the foreign investment was drying down, drying up, foreigners, multinational executives ran away from Beijing. For the first 2 years after, it's almost like a ghost town. They all ran away. They thought there would be disorder, civil war, Deng Xiaoping, with credit, well, whether you like it right or wrong, he thought that this is very dangerous. So he had to do something to reverse in the aftermath, to reverse the trend of China trying to close. There was almost a danger, because there was struggle going on in the party. That China would have closed down, would have limited this reform. But on the contrary, Deng Xiaoping, I don't know if you heard of it, that he went to the south and then declared that we should stop this debate about Mr. Socialism or Mr. Capitalism. He again repeated his cat that can touch the mice. It's a good cat. It is a black cat, or black or white cat. It's a good mice. It's a good cat as long as it catches the mice. That's the thing. It's a very pragmatic thing. So, anything that will promote the rapid economic development in China is good. We should not debate whether it's capitalist or socialist good. He really brought that up. Because in his dying years, now 5 years later he would die. He was already decrepit a little bit. But he used that final vital years to promote again. So he opened up Shanghai. That's mid-90s. Reform of China now. But in fact, the reform at that point was only concentrated in southern China, the borders, and then that's a laboratory, because the Communist Party has experience with opening up and dealing with capitalist global economy. They were doing section by section, laboratory by laboratory. So he decided to open up Shanghai, make Shanghai really like Shenzhen, like the border, the economic space, big economic zone. If you open up Shanghai, you almost open up the whole China to do all this. He did that. And looking back, it looks like nothing, given what we know of China today. But in the mid-90s, that was a very bold decision on his part, because if so-called reform will mean that China will become capitalistic in the Communist Party eye, and then therefore there will be even more demand for democracy. That's dangerous from the Communist Party point of view. But no, Deng Xiaoping ignored that and opened up Shanghai, made Shanghai. That's the start of Shanghai revitalization, only began in the mid-90s. Ironically, after Tiananmen massacre. So Tiananmen massacre is a tragedy, but the lesson of history is that it made Deng Xiaoping realize that he was, in fact, behind the time, that he should have been bolder in reform. So the tragedy occurred, but it resulted in even more, an even bolder economic opening up by China. So that the tragedy, that the dialectics of Chinese history, that it took bloodshed for Deng to realize that the future of China lies not in closing or narrowing, but rather in opening up even further and welcoming all this pernicious influence from the West, so to speak, as a byproduct of that. So that's the trend. So the media, again, had more freedom to report. So of course we have more freedom. So at that point in time, we were able to allow for media to live anywhere we wanted. There was more freedom now. And more places in China were open to foreigners. I think by the mid-90s, almost all parts of China were open up to foreigners, no longer restricted foreigners. So the media had more freedom. And the last stage, of course, was 2008, the Olympics. The Olympics brought greater media freedom in China from the point of view of foreign media. We no longer need to ask for permission from local government before we can go into place and report. Of course, censorship is there. So you look at the reports, and we just passed the anniversary of June 4th, the Tiananmen massacre, and again, they don't allow the certain sensitive picture of that being sent to the state-owned television satellite system. Still there. And really negative reporting, sometimes we call the journalists involved and they criticize those being impartial or biased. So that's still going on. We're dealing with one party, but again, so we see that China's media policy, together with the changes that's come through over the years, it keeps changing. It's not perfect. But again, they will not give up the principle that nothing will be allowed to threaten the Communist Party leadership or the legitimacy of the party or the regime stability. They will always maintain control. Even as they expand, they also maintain. Now we go to the Chinese media. So of course, traditional media is owned by the Communist Party, the People's Daily. We know that the main media is still owned by the state. But to give allowance for the diversity of the interests, opinion, all that, this main media has been allowed to establish their own sister publications that are more commercial oriented, and some of them can be like tabloid kind of, because to make just to capture the audience. So but still, there's an overall control of the publication industry through the different bureaucracy of the commission or the party down to the municipal level. What is more dynamic in the media channel is the internet and online. And here is the bigger challenge. For a time, the Chinese Communist Party, of course, was wary of the internet. Up to mid-1990s, there were some anti-Japan protests from time to time, and they would confiscate computers of the organizers. They were scared. The internet was new to the Communist Party. It took them some time to realize, back and forth in the process of summing up the experience, they finally realized they need the internet to economic reform, no doubt about it. But how to control the political threat that comes out of it is the major challenge. But so eventually there was a process, a work in progress, until they came out with the final decision. It's more developed now, that embracing the internet. And from their experience, they are able to use the internet, not just for economic reform, but in fact, it can be used, and they have come to this conclusion, it can be used to strengthen political party control. We call it, the scholars call it technological positivism. In fact, new technology can be used, sometimes can be subversive of regime, but it can be turned around and embrace the technological positivism. So they came up with this. They're quite proud now. Their white papers on the internet, I'm quite proud of the achievement of them. But they had to adopt measures that will never be seen in Canada and the US. They have the firewall system, the shut off all these foreign brands, Google, Facebook, they developed their own, they grew their own local players. So Baidu, for example, is the number one, 70% of the search engine market is controlled by local brands, because these local brands, these local players, these are privately owned. By the way, the Communist Party is a mouthpiece. They tried to enter the Google, the search engine market. They have their own lot of investment. It didn't prosper. Somehow, it's still the main portals in China, and they're listed in New York, stock exchange. are owned by the private entrepreneurs, so they allow that. They allow that. It's better than allowing foreign brands. And also, because the local brand players, they are susceptible to local self-censorship. They have rules of censorship. So they, from time to time, they are susceptible to party control. So that they allow them.